Almost a year ago, it's doubtful that many people outside Barrie, Ontario, had heard of Patrick Brown. He was a backbench MP in the Harper government. But more people know his name today, given his stunning and overwhelming victory at Ontario's Progressive Conservative Party leadership contest last weekend. Joining us now for more on the significance of that win, here's Chris Stockwell, former Ontario Cabinet Minister and Speaker of the Ontario Legislature, and Nita Kang, former PC candidate and regional organizer for Toronto for the Patrick Brown campaign. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Congratulations are in order for you,
Thank
I guess. You did your job.
Yes.
How did he won 83 of 107 ridings.
That's correct.
How did he win so big?
Well, there's a number of things that contributed to the success of the campaign. I've always believed that one sign of a great leader is assembling a winning team, and he had a strong team right across Ontario that took his lead and followed his work ethic and worked hard from day one right to the end. And of course, the relationships that he built as an MP over the past 9 years really came through, and we had top leaders from several cultural communities that were on our team that helped us lead us to victory.
That was really the key, wasn't it? I mean, in his acceptance speech, in his victory speech, I mean, he said a word in, what, 9 or 10 different languages to all of these different minority communities? So that was the key to victory, wasn't it?
It was certainly a large part of the victory. And the relationships that he built over the last 9 years were with members of several different cultural groups. And what he said throughout the campaign was part of bringing these groups into the PC party is showing up and extending an ear to them. And he's done that for the past 9 years. And they repaid him with a large amount of support.
Chris, it is conventional wisdom in a leadership campaign that if you get the most caucus endorsements, as Christine Elliott had, if you raise the most amount of money, which Christine Elliott did, if you get big name endorsements from lots of other people, former premiers, as Christine Elliott did, if you were the deputy leader of the party going into this thing, as she was, you're going to win. She didn't. Why didn't the formula work this time?
Well, there's no doubt Patrick Brown was a formidable candidate that no one expected. I mean, he really did come out of the blue. If you had asked 100 Conservatives before nominations who's going to win or who's going to be in the, nobody would have said Patrick Brown. So certainly that was a factor too. The guy worked like heck to get elected, and you got to give him credit for that and all those things that was just mentioned. Having said that, the party was ready for change. And my dad and mom, who live in Wasaga Beach, went to a PC meeting where Patrick Brown was speaking. I spoke to them after, and my dad said, you know, he's pretty good, and I think I'm going to vote for him, which I never would have expected to hear. And it wasn't because of the policies he was putting forward. It wasn't because of this kind of high-end, deep-thinking, conservative third way, second way, where are we going way. It was just because he said, I've had enough. The last 3 elections, Mr. Tory's full funding of religious schools, Mr. Hudak's work gangs, and then Mr. Hudak's 100,000. They're all bad mistakes, and we just don't need a change in leadership. We need to see change at the top. And that resonated. And not to diminish what was also used, I think that had a lot to do with it as well.
Just time to throw the rascals out? Was that part of the message?
Well, Patrick traveled all across Ontario, all 107 ridings numerous times, and what he heard time and time again is that we needed deep-rooted change in the PC party. And he's committed.
You know, one of the things he said was, the people who ran for this party last time and who lost badly because, in his view, the leader and the brass around the leader lost sight of what it's all about, they're the ones who are really supporting me. You're one of those people.
That's correct.
So that message resonated with you?
Yes, it did. There was a number of reasons why I decided to support him, and that's one of them. I wanted to see deep-rooted change and change in how we develop our policy platform and how it's communicated, and a more inclusive process. But along with that, I saw that as an MP, he made major inroads with cultural groups and also made inroads with different professional associations and unions as well.
More on that in a bit. These campaigns, let's face it, get a little ugly from time to time. There's some things said. Monty McNaughton, who was one of the candidates running, put out a press release calling Christine Elliott Trudeau, as if to say she's really a liberal, not really a conservative. He talked about some big pink tent that she wanted to create, kind of making fun of her desire to create a big blue tent. How deep are these wounds in your view?
Well, I don't know. I mean, to be fair, Jim Flaherty ran against Ernie Eves, and
Same stuff.
worse. Come on,
true.
he had sandals flip-flopping, and he had pink this and that, and I don't know if that caused the defeat of the next election. I think Patrick Brown can probably fix it because it wasn't Patrick Brown, it was Monty McNaughton. I think it was unnecessary, quite frankly. It just didn't need to happen. But is it irreparable? I doubt it. I mean, they can surmount it. And Patrick Brown's going to have to be the one that does it, because he's going to have to go to the people that were offended and say, come back. It wasn't intended to be that way, and he can fix it.
Do you know if he's called Christine Elliott yet?
Yes.
He has
Yes, they
spoken
have
to
been
her?
in touch. And you know what? By definition, any leadership campaign is divisive. But now the whole party is committed to being united and standing behind Patrick 100%.
Her too?
Yes.
She has undertaken to
The
serve out her term under his leadership, et cetera.
entire caucus is ready now to stand behind him and move forward and move toward more positive things.
I'd be shocked if she weren't. I would really be shocked.
You think she's on board?
Oh, absolutely.
Right after the last election in June, you wrote this for our website. I'm going to read it back to you here. You said, my advice to my conservative friends is resist the message of the center-left, including move to the middle or moderate your views. It's important for everyone to know right now that we, the Ontario PCs, were and still are right. I assume you mean in both senses of that word.
Yes.
Is Patrick Brown following that advice?
Well, it's difficult to say. I mean, the one thing, and it's not a criticism because I understand why he's doing what he's doing, but the one concern I have is he's a pragmatic conservative. And I've heard him explain it, and I'm sure we'll get another explanation. Even after they explain it, I don't know what the hell it means. And that's been the concern I've had. Do I believe that he is a pragmatic right-of-center conservative? Yes, I do. I do believe that from his voting history, from how he spoke and how he behaved before he got into the leadership, which would indicate to me that he's a right-of-center conservative. And I wrote that because in 2018, the next election, a lot of the issues that are going to be on the table are going to be calling for a right-of-center party. And what I didn't want us to do is be convinced by the pointy heads and all those out there and the pundits, well, they have to move and moderate and move to the middle and move to the center-left, and that would have been a huge mistake. And frankly, I don't really think they have. I think Patrick really fits the bill.
Can you tell us what that means? Because he does say this all the time. I'm not a red Tory, I'm not a blue Tory, I'm not a this, I'm not a that. I'm a pragmatic Tory.
That's right.
What does that mean?
Steve, that means listening to Ontarians, doing what's best for Ontarians with less of a partisan approach and more about just doing what makes sense.
Is he a social conservative?
You know what? I think Patrick defies labels. He's not a social conservative. He's not a red Tory. He's not a blue Tory. He's a new breed of Tory that is focused on a more pragmatic approach.
Well, let's be clear. Is he a social conservative? I would say probably. The way he's voted in the past, it would be very difficult to say he's not. But it doesn't matter. Stephen Harper buried that chestnut a decade ago when he said, look, these are not on the agenda. We will not be debating these. We will not be changing these laws. Now, it took a couple of elections for the public to finally buy into it. Once elected, he didn't put them on the agenda, he didn't introduce legislation, and he didn't change the laws. All Mr. Brown has to do is adopt that position, even if he is a social conservative, because I believe Mr. Harper's a social conservative. It's not a terrible thing. You don't have to be ashamed. You just have to say,
it's just not where the majority of Ontarians are.
it's just not where we are, so I'm not
all.
going there. But I'm a fiscal conservative. I want to balance the budgets. I want to get these rascals out. And I don't think the OPP should have offices at Queen Park investigating people.
That was cute. That was cute.
Shot. I couldn't help it.
Charles McVety, who was one of the more controversial evangelical leaders in this province, is a guy I bumped into at the convention last Saturday. He said Patrick Brown is a 100%, has a 100% voting record on the issues I care about. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of again, there's nothing illegal about this, I'm just saying it. There were a lot of social conservatives who saw to it that Patrick Brown won. They will be expecting a quid for that pro quo. What are they going to get?
I think Patrick has made it very clear that he doesn't plan to reopen those issues. And the beauty of our campaign is that our supporters were from all parts of the conservative spectrum, as well as some former liberals as well. So Patrick truly did build the big blue tent through this campaign. And going forward, you'll see a continued effort to invite various groups to our party.
You have to be clear. Nobody can satisfy Charles McVety. Nobody, no person other than Charles McVety could satisfy Charles McVety. So Patrick Brown, he supported him. Patrick Brown should shake his hand and say thank you very much. But there is no quid pro quo here. I'm serving the public. I'm putting legislation forward. And if you don't like it, then you're not going to like it. And he doesn't like Mr. Harper either. So nobody can satisfy the guy, so ignore him.
Okay, let's go to the other end of the spectrum then. Nita, you know that there are a lot of people who call themselves Red Tories who, while Tim Hudak was leader of the party, felt that they were homeless. Do they have a home in this PC party?
Absolutely.
Prove it.
Absolutely. We did a lot of work over the last 10 months reaching out to various groups, and I can tell you that there was different cultural groups, there was people, like you said, that lean more to the right, but we had people from all parts of the spectrum, and you'll see, certainly actions speak louder than words. You'll see going forward that we'll be approaching other groups and trying to have a broader appeal to Ontarians.
Okay, I'd like you both to look at the monitor over my shoulder because we're going to put a picture up that I took at the convention on Saturday at the Toronto Congress Centre. This was a group of people on stage having their picture taken after the winner was announced. And the tweet I accompanied this picture with was, when's the last time you saw something like this at the Ontario PC Party convention? As if to say, it's a new day. I immediately got probably a dozen or more tweets back from people saying, where are all the women? And it's a fair question. There's a gender gap on this party. There has been for a long time. There were lots of people from multicultural communities at that convention. There were not a lot of women with multicultural faces at that convention. Is that an issue for you guys?
It's a fair question, but it wasn't an issue for us on the campaign. We saw at campaign rallies across the province there were men, women, and children. And in fact, on our campaign as well, women held some of our top positions: director of communications, Get Out the Vote director, director of fundraising. So it wasn't an issue for us. And you may not see it in that photo, but I can tell you there were several women from various cultural groups that were cheering on Patrick throughout the campaign.
Well, let me do the stereotype here. He's a single man, 36 years old, loves to play hockey and drink Red Bull. I mean, he exudes macho. Mm-hmm. Your party's had a gender gap problem in the past. Does Patrick Brown as leader help fix that?
Well, let's be clear, we've had a gender gap problem for almost ever. The fact is, conservative voters tend to be men. And there's just no two ways about it. That's what they tend to be. Have we always had a problem finding the female vote? Yes, we have. Is it a problem? I'm not sure people vote that way, women or men. Oh, he's this, that, and the next thing. And if anyone's blown that myth up, it has to be Kathleen Wynne, because she got votes from parts of the communities that would never have voted for Kathleen Wynne 15 years ago. So I'm not sure that's an issue. But I think we should also be very careful about, do we have a gender gap issue? We've always had a gender gap issue. We can't ignore it. We've got to pursue it, but it can't be a raison d'etre.
Let me ask you if you have a Toronto problem still. As
Yes.
you know, in the last 4 elections, your party has gone 0 for 92. Mm-hmm. You've not won a single
That
seat in
gets
the
you sent to
416.
the minors every time.
Right. You used to represent a riding in the west end of Toronto in Etobicoke. Do you think a Patrick Brown-led PC party's got a shot at winning Toronto ridings?
They don't have to win many, right? If they want to form a government, they got to win the 905. They got to win outside. And when it comes to Toronto, they have to win 4 or 5. That's all they have to win to form a majority government. Can they win 4 or 5? Yes, they can win 4 or 5. Can they win 14? Not a hope in hell.
Really?
Not a hope in hell.
How come?
It would just, we don't resonate.
Not yet.
Our caucus, our message doesn't resonate in the city of Toronto like it does in rural Ontario, eastern Ontario, 905, the north. I think it can resonate in the north. It doesn't resonate in downtown Ottawa, and it seems a little bit not a little bit, significantly in Toronto.
Nita, you ran in Scarborough last time.
That's right.
And got trounced. I'm not blaming you. Look, these things are the result of, leader, policy, party, all that kind of stuff. The candidate is the least to blame. But can you imagine you'd do better if you ran again in Scarborough under Patrick Brown's leadership?
I believe so. In this leadership, we won 16 out of the 22 Toronto ridings. And in many of those ridings, we brought the membership up from less than 100 members to thousands of members. Those are all people that are going to volunteer for us and help us in the next election. So there is great potential to win in Toronto, and that's an area that I believe that we will see change in the coming election.
When two PCs run against each other in Toronto, a PC is going to win. So I appreciate the fact they won 16 to 23. You got to dump in the NDP and the Liberals before you can start.
Yeah, but I think her point is that you would have expected the kind of red or Tory to win the Toronto seats, given how leftish Toronto is.
I think she sort of did win the centre quite a bit more.
No, she won ridings like this one, like St. Paul's and Trinity Spadina.
But that's correct. But my point is really that we took the membership to another level.
This is a very fair point. Very fair point.
And all of those people now will be working with us to grow the membership even more in Toronto and to assist us in the next election to win Toronto ridings. I mean, the Harper Tories showed us that we can win in Toronto, and under Patrick, I'm confident we will as well.
Let me pick up on that, because in fact he has said he wants to, quote unquote, raid the Stephen Harper playbook on how to win. What do you interpret that to mean? Well,
there's no doubt in my mind, particularly in the 905 and 416 area, there's the ethnic vote is significant play on raiding the Harper, and he's done it. He's had ministers work these communities, and is it a distasteful work communities to get? No, it's not. It's politics, and they've done a very good job mining votes in typical areas that we didn't get votes in before.
Well, it's showing up is what it is.
Sure, and Patrick Brown, he might as well just say that, forget about reading the book. That's exactly what he's talking about.
What does it mean to you?
What does
the Stephen Harper playbook that he says he wants to pick up on?
Well, I mean, I think Patrick has already been taking pointers from that playbook leading up to this leadership, and you'll certainly see more outreach in different cultural communities and bringing people on board to the PC party that have not felt welcome before and were not members of the party before. So there's certainly great potential using some of the lessons learned from the federal Tories, and I do believe that Patrick will take Toronto and the outlying 905 areas to another level now.
You going to run for him again?
Well, we'll see. I'm going to remain active in the PC party, certainly. A little too early to say whether I'll run again or not.
Okay. Part of the Harper Playbook, let's just spend another minute on this, because, Chris, part of the Harper Playbook is basically jettisoning a lot of the principles, quote unquote, that you got elected on in the first place. Stephen Harper did not get elected pledging to buy car companies and pledging to run $55 billion deficits, and he did both of those things. Mm-hmm. So does Patrick Brown have to put a lot of water in his wine in order to be a more palatable, acceptable leader? Yeah,
sure. I think he's going to have to put some water in his wine. And let's be fair to Harper, that was an economic, we were in economic distress. I think in normal times he would never have done that, and to be fair, he's balanced the budget now.
Sort of.
Well, okay, sort of. Well, he's closer than he's as close as damn is to swearing. As far as Patrick Brown is concerned, anytime you're a leader, and I even know this with Mike Harris, and he was as hard-nosed, strident as guy. He had to put some water in his wine as well. I mean, you have to accept the fact that all your positions, all your policies aren't widely embraced sometimes, and you have to say, okay, we're going to modify, we're not going to do it, or we're going to build this for a couple of years to see if we can buy them in. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just good, practical, pragmatic politics.
Let me come back to something you raised earlier, which was the unions. He did have union members at his leadership announcements. The unions, as you know, are all deeply supporting the Liberal government at the moment and have for the last many elections. Do you think the different tone, I mean, he even welcomed union members in his victory speech. What do you imagine that different tone can lead to? Because it's hard to imagine unions abandoning this governing party and going for the Conservatives all of a sudden.
Well, as an MP, he made major inroads with different professional associations, and the key here is keeping an open door, which may not be what we had before. So he'll have an open door, he'll have open ears, and he'll be willing to work with the unions.
Chris, last question to you. He has been underestimated from the get-go. That's not a bad place to be, right?
No, it's way, way better to be underestimated than overestimated. And I'll tell you right now, he's still being underestimated.
By whom?
Well, I forget the guy's name,
Stephen Del Duca.
Del Duca,
Transport Minister.
Him coming out and talking about the Tea Party and stuff, keep it up. Keep it up, pal, because you are going to wear this one, because he is a lot smarter, a lot more intelligent than people know. He's a lot more practical, and he's very strategic, and he has one very, very strong advantage. He works his ass off, and you can't ever replace that.
I was waiting for the profanity. I'm glad we got it. I'm glad we got it. Chris Stockwell, Nita Kang, really good of you both to come into TVO tonight to help us out with this. Thanks so much.
Thank you
very much.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.